Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barner. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves. Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Bronwyn Reid. Bronwyn is the founder of Small Company, Big Business, where she helps small to medium-sized enterprises translate how large organizations think, procure, and assess risk into practical actions those SMEs can execute. So, Bronwyn, it is so great to have you with me. Thank you for joining the show.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here, Kelly. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Well, I shared a little bit about your focus today, but that doesn't really tell us how you got to this point. What do you find that it's helpful or interesting for people to know about your professional journey?
Like so many professionals, Kelly, I didn't actually plan it. It just unfolded as time went on. My early background is my family owned agribusiness operations, farming. So they were small suppliers to very large organizations. And I've just continued the trend over the years. I have worked in corporate. So I've been on the other side of the equation as well. For the last 30 years, I've owned an environmental company here in Queensland, Australia. We've dealt with the BHP, the Rio Tinto, all of the big names. We've dealt with government at all levels. So I guess I've had a lifetime of being that very small supplier dealing with the extremely large organizations. So that's how I come to be talking about this stuff a lot.
Now, if you had to take all of that experience, and I know you said you were also on the corporate side, but you've predominantly been on the small to medium-sized business side, dealing with these large organizations. How do you describe for people who have not experienced it what that is like on a day-to-day basis?
It can be extraordinarily frustrating. To the point of heartbreaking. But if you have yourself prepared, the rewards are there. But if you don't understand, if you're not prepared mentally and operationally, it can be one of the most frustrating things you'll ever do in your life.
Yeah. Well, and it can be tricky because I've also been on sort of the small side and the large side of business. And when you're on the large side, most times the bent is towards standardized things, do things the same in all cases. But as we know from being on the smaller side of things, it doesn't necessarily make sense. You almost need to have either some exceptions or a couple of different ways of handling basic processes. If companies were to start thinking about taking a slightly different kind of approach where they make some allowances for their smaller suppliers, how many large enterprises do you think even have a good up-to-date handle on who those suppliers are and what that large company buys from them?
You have hit on a big one there, Kelly. I actually presented at a procurement conference in Sydney a few years ago. And one of the representatives from one of the biggest companies worldwide came up to me and he said, "That's all fabulous, but we don't even know who our small suppliers are." I'm just trying to get the right words. It's so difficult for them because they've been brought up in a different way to the way we've grown up. Our magic is not standardizing. Our magic is being able to do things quickly, turn on a dime. How many of the biggest inventions that we know of and that we use every day now were thought up by a founder in a garage, in the metaphorical garage. That's our secret power. And by ignoring that and turning the other way and just looking for a very large offshore supplier in another country at the end of a very long supply chain, I firmly believe that large organizations they're cutting off their nose to spite their face.
Yeah. And yet, truthfully, I don't think they want to, right? So like a lot of the people in this procurement and sourcing audience, they care about their smaller suppliers, right? They, as points of contact, are regularly helping them through an RFP process, making sure that they have the paperwork that they need. So it's not that companies don't want to work with smaller suppliers better. It's just that, as you said, their frameworks are not necessarily set up to make that easy. So certainly the benefit to large organizations is to have the speed and innovation and resilience of little businesses. Is it fair to assume that the biggest opportunity for those small businesses is the revenue that comes from large businesses? Or do you think there are actually other incentives beyond that that give those small businesses a reason to hunger for those large accounts?
Certainly, absolutely. The revenues there. All of a sudden, your bank account doesn't look like a roller coaster ride. Lurch from contract to contract. You've got that consistent income coming in if you've signed a good contract. On the other side of that is that if you do take the time to do that preparation, prove yourself to be a good and reliable and quality and a low-risk supplier to a large organization, I can guarantee you that your business will be performing at a multiple of where it was performing before, where everybody was running around trying to remember what they're supposed to do. And we have these things called undocumented features or undocumented variations that pop into products because the systems aren't there. So to me, yes, there's the revenue, but it's more than that.
Yeah. Now, when you think about, again, from the larger company size, we don't necessarily have somebody that's a small business handling specialist or something like that. It's probably just somebody with generalist responsibilities, maybe oversight for a specific category. Is there any kind of experience that could actually help qualify someone to understand or to work with those small suppliers so that everybody wins from the relationship?
I'd like to think that if they worked with me, and I'm talking about the big company side, it's not hard. It's actually a bit of a mind shift. And as you've clearly pointed out, the people who come into corporate and they finish up in these positions, they probably never met. They may have never even met a small business. They don't know what one looks like, thinks like, smells like. The people that do it best, I find, are people who have actually had a background in small business themselves. I think of one particular procurement manager. He was with a large government-owned utility here in Queensland, Australia, and he is still the only person who has ever taken me out for coffee. And we went through the contract clause by clause. He explained what it meant to me as a small business owner. I still hold that memory fondly.
Unfortunately, because there's probably an exception.
Yes, but it isn't hard. It's an understanding piece, Kelly.
Yeah. So let's think a little bit. I mean, that's that ability to connect and that ability to review the information that makes me start to think about sort of the communications that might need to happen if you're a large enterprise working with an SME in order for that relationship to be successful. Are there any communications related best practices that you recommend large companies follow?
Yes. Remember that every transaction is human to human. In the end, we talk about B2B, business to business, B2C, business to consumer. But in the end, there's always two humans involved. If we keep the human element, and look, I get it, not every company can do what that lovely gentleman did and take all their small suppliers out for coffee and go through the contract clause by clause. But between that and nothing, there is a continuum, and there definitely are things that can be done. Let's start with number one. Look at the contract you're putting in front of people.
Yes.
Seriously.
Now, when you think about if best practices are communicating, being realistic about contract terms and conditions, payment terms, people would like to suggest that as well. Are there any things that you warn against doing when working with small businesses? Or are there things that increase the risk of that situation or put the small business at a disadvantage that large companies really do need to be aware of potentially an issue?
Okay. You mentioned a big one, the old payment terms thing. I don't know what the situation is in your country, but in Australia here now, any company with a turnover over $100 million, and granted that's not a lot of companies, they must report their payment terms to small businesses, to the federal government. And there's a big spreadsheet online where small companies can actually log in and find out. And they can actually take a positive decision and say, no, I do not wish to work with this company because their payment terms are, 45 days after the end of the month, after 90 days, after the invoice was put in and we felt like paying it. That's one. Another one is briefly mentioned contract terms. That's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. Insurance requirements. Do you really need $20 million worth of public liability insurance to supply coffee cups? No, you don't. Simple language in contracts. Another one is unilateral ability for them to terminate you with no notice. Again, that's been covered off by law in Australia. At last, some of us have only been advocating for 10 years, 20 years. Another one is risk and safety. Now, I know I'm touching on a raw nerve there, but I have this theory that the risk industry and the safety industry have taken it upon themselves to make risk and safety so obtuse, so obscure, that they've turned everybody off. There is a better approach to safety and risk management that is small business, medium business friendly, and guess what? They work. You don't have to have safety manuals by the kilo to keep people safe. So there's a whole raft of things they can do.
Yeah. Now, we've talked a lot about what large companies and large company representatives can do to have successful relationships with smaller businesses. But I also suspect that it works the other way as well, that there are probably some things that small to medium-sized businesses can do to have successful relationships with large clients. And as you mentioned earlier, that's going to contribute directly to their ability to grow and stabilize. What are some things that the smaller end of that relationship equation can do to contribute to their own success?
Right. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Again, it's understanding. We, as small, medium business owners, must understand that these corporations have tens or hundreds of thousands of employees. Yeah. They operate across national borders, across state borders. There are people in there of all types. They're a huge beast. They don't operate and they don't think like we do as we turn up to our small business every day. So there has to be a level of understanding from our side as well, that we need to prove to them that, one, we can supply with quality on time every time, that we do not pose a risk to their supply chain. Of course, that's the big one. They just no risk. Risk is anathema to a big company manager. So those two things revolve around systems, making sure that we've got the systems in place so we can provide that quality product every time on time and consistently. And secondly, that we understand risk. We understand their attitude to risk. We understand our own risk and how we can prove ourselves and be that low risk supplier. So that would be the two big ones for me.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I think about it, even from my own experience on both sides of this, I'm personally a small company person. I like the sense of responsibility. I like the sense of accountability. I like the ownership that goes with all of that. And the ability to sort of turn on a dime if that ends up being the thing that leads to success. And I'm sure I'm going to get this expression wrong. It's from someone famous in history, but it's something along the lines of, with the great and mighty, a little patience. It's something like that. It's like, to our very large company partners, like, bless all your hearts. Like, they're dealing with things that we're not experiencing, just like we're dealing with things that they're not experiencing. For us, it's personal. For us, if we have a major win, maybe it means a family vacation. Maybe it means an upgrade, investing in something in the business. The incentives aren't quite the same to stick your neck out in a large company situation, to your point about zero risk. And so we're sort of wired for taking chances and doing things we didn't think anybody could do. It's why those large companies want to work with us. But we need to understand that we're not necessarily working with the same dynamics on the other side of that relationship. And so understanding what does motivate somebody or what discourages them, I have to think that understanding flowing in both directions sets up a better situation for everybody to get what they need out of the situation.
A lovely, lovely man who was very high up in Microsoft gave me a saying once, that our job is to make our contact within that large organization look good.
Yes, I think that is a great way to look at it.
Yeah,
because if you make them look good, typically they will take care of you.
100%, and bring that thinking to the person above them and the person below them. So you've got an ecosystem within the company to be on your team, Speaking of payment terms, that's one of the things I recommend. Make yourself a friend in accounts payable. So you can ring up and say, hey, Kelly, this has happened, blah, blah, blah. Amazing what a bit of human to human can do.
Absolutely. Now, Bronwyn, we have a tradition here, the Sourcing Hero podcast. I want to bring you in. It's like an initiation. I'm going to give you 2 questions. You can pick either one, and there are no wrong answers. So your choices are, what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or what do you think heroism looks like in a business context?
I'll take number 2, please.
Okay.
Heroism to me in a business context is around choosing the long-term value over the short-term gain. Having the mental attitude that it's better to work on relationships than transactions. And I know, that that's the way to building value for everybody. Yeah. I don't know why it's so hard for some people to understand.
And yet, as I listen to you say that, I think to myself, I think that passes the test, that definition of heroism in a business context applies in small businesses and in large businesses. right? The long term,
100%.
the big picture over the short term, the small focus picture, that is something that is the same or would at least work in both contexts.
100%. It looks different. It takes a different form, of course, and there's different dollars involved, but the underlying concept is exactly the same. Look for the value, not the transaction.
Absolutely. Now, Bronwyn, if anybody is meeting you for the first time by listening to this episode, what is a good way for them to reach out, to connect, to learn more about what you do, to pick your brain about small business, large business relationships? Where do you recommend that people go to find you?
Probably the best place, Kelly, is to just go straight to my website, which is very simple, bronwynreid.com.au. There I offer, obviously all my writing is there, videos, etc. But I do have a small, I think it's a 30-minute session that's complement. I call it an aha moment consultation. Hopefully in 30 minutes we can get to a point where somebody says, aha, that's what I need to think of. Beyond that, I offer what I call an up session, which is unpack and prioritize. So that's a paid session. It's 90 minutes where we do a little bit more of a deep dive into your business and see what we need to unpack and prioritize to get you on the right train.
Awesome. Well, whether people are listening and they're in small businesses that want to get bigger, or whether people are working in big businesses and they want to have connections with smaller ones, I certainly appreciate you sharing your experiences and all of your insights and giving people some of those actionable things they can start putting into practice to create these win-win situations.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been an absolute pleasure being on your podcast, and I hope that I can come back at another time and have another chat with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well, and always remember that you can be a hero too.